I'm talking.
I'll stay.
I'm talking that I was just hustling like that, like probably annoying the hell out of him. I actually get emotional saying that, you know. But yeah, you know, I don't know if you have any traditions like that at Vanderbilt. I know, but I'm so sick of being in this underdog story. So fast forward, they ended up being trash, and he got fired.
Hello and welcome back to Redirected. My name is Andrew East, and this is a show where we sit down with celebrities, athletes, entrepreneurs, really anybody who has had a significant pivot or change in life. And today is an episode that I'm really excited about. We sit down with fellow NFL player Will Compton, and Will and I have played on some similar teams, though never at the same time. But he was on the Redskins, I was on the Redskins. We first met when he was playing for the Titans, and he is currently on the Oakland Raiders. He plays linebacker and is a beast athlete. But we first met because Will has an awesome reputation, and I reached out to him. We were on his podcast. Shawn and I were on his podcast called Bussin with the Boys. You can go check out that episode. We had a blast. And today, Will's going to talk to us about his football career and then ultimately what led him to want to start doing something different, like start this podcast. And so you're really going to enjoy this one. Will is a top-notch dude, awesome guy. If you want to find out more about Will, the links to his socials and his podcast are down below. Enjoy this one with Will Compton.
Hold on, what is the deal? Was Matt Neely there during our interview?
Yeah, you guys saw the Matt Neely stuff?
I didn't.
I don't know what happened to him. Fill me in.
So Matt was sick for a few days.
Yeah.
And he had called, it was like Tuesday, because we usually drop our YouTube on Tuesday.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, man, I didn't chop up a lot of content today, make clips. He's like, I've been feeling sick. He thought he was just hungover from going hard on Sunday. And I was like, yeah, man, you know, take your time. Like, as long as everything's ready to go, like, yeah, do what you got to do. And then on Wednesday, we were just all in our group chat and stuff. And he was like hit and miss on getting back to us. And then we were trying to get this key. We were trying to get the key to the bus from the tailgate from him so we could go into the bus and get something off the bus. And he just put, I was like, hey, Matt, we got to have you there Thursday morning to get the key to the bus. And all he put was okay. And the next day, didn't hear from him. Shot him a question mark. I was like, hey, how bad is your sickness? Question mark, like, hey, how you feeling?
What?
Yeah. It went through and stuff. And then one of our group chats went green. You know, everybody's got iMessage. And then when it went green, I was like, I wonder who this is. So I texted Matt again. And I was like, yo, what's going on? And it was green. And then I was like, okay. I went from like annoyed, like, okay, he's not responding back to me because usually he's responding all the time, and always on Twitter, to he wasn't, his phone was either dead or something, you know, something happened. So I DM'd his girlfriend and I was like, hey, Chelsea, I was like, have you heard from Matt? Like, the squad hasn't heard from him. Nobody's talked to him, and he's not on social media, which is rare. Like, he's always trolling people. And I was DMing her, and she was trying to get my number from other people saying it was important. She calls me, and she's just, she's crying, she's bawling. And she just says, Matt passed away. Yeah, and they had found him wrapped around his toilet, like from throwing up.
What?
Yeah. And he died.
What was he sick with?
They don't know yet. Autopsy takes like 6 to 8 weeks, they said. It was sudden, man. It was brutal.
But there was like a kind of a memorial tailgate.
Yeah, we had a wake. We had like a celebration for him and stuff. That went awesome. There was like, you know, several hundred people there. And, you know, we did like the shot. We've done as much as we can to honor, like, it's been shitty, but went to a service. This service was like, I feel like it gave a lot of people a lot of good, everybody was telling stories. They kind of opened the floor up and everybody was just telling, you know, stories about him and stuff. But it was rough, man. You go from like, you talk to somebody every day, right? Like in our instance, it's like, it was our Lexi.
Yeah. And
then they just don't respond. And you're like, hey, because there's like this work friendship balance that's always like kind of there.
Right.
Like, hey, what's going on? Like, hey, you know, effing respond to me. And then it goes green, and then you get that phone call and you just don't know how to feel about it. It didn't hit me until like the next day. This day two was like when everything started to set in with a lot of people, and it was pretty hard. It was just tough. Death is crazy, dude.
He was young. Huh?
Yeah, he was 30.
Wow.
He was 30, man. And, you know, it's like, I've been using this quote like everywhere because it was one that I had my birthday party. my birthday party that I told you about. I was like, hey, you're more than welcome to come, yada yada. But I was trying to like, people wanted me to give a speech, and I was already, I already had enough to where I couldn't really give a good speech. I was like, hey, I appreciate y'all for coming. I was like, my beautiful girlfriend Charo put this on. Everybody kind of applauded, and then applause stopped, and I was like, thanks for coming again. And that was it. And Matt had texted me the next day. He was like, yo, epic speech. He's like, that's one's going to go. That's an all-timer right there. And I was like, dude, I called him right away. And I was like, I had something mustered up because I was just kind of searching stuff because I was wanting to figure out how to tell people that I had met recently and kind of not comparing them, but making them feel the same way about people who have been there, familiar faces that were there since I was young. I had some good buddies up from Missouri. And I'm trying to like find something to say that like makes people that are new to me kind of resonate with the old people and with my old friends. And it's like the quote goes, you can meet somebody today that has better intentions for you than people you've known for a lifetime. Time means nothing and character does. And that was kind of like, I was able to tell them that I actually get. My bad, dude. I actually get emotional saying that. Man, I didn't expect to go this deep right away. I get emotional saying that because I wanted people that I had met recently to know that that's how I felt about them, right? You meet some good people, and it's like, how do you make people that you've just recently met feel like old friends, right? Like you're trying to like constantly find a word to describe old friends that just met. And, I was glad I got to at least tell Matt what I had in store. And, I got to say that at a service and things like that. And, that's how I feel like when I think of somebody like Matt, about people I've met in Nashville. And, that's been what I've been using. But I apologize for tearing up right there, dude.
No, you're all right, man. I think it's warranted.
Yeah.
I do have to say, man, your reputation, and this is only the second time we've hung out in person. But,
yeah. People watching, like, I'm sitting here teared up, dude. This is the second time we've met.
But we've texted, and you do a great job at making people feel like you're their friend. And I felt that way. Like you invited Shawn and I, my wife and I, to your birthday party, and it was like we went one time.
Yeah.
So anyway,
well, dude, you were on the pod and you mentioned game night, and then we have our mutual friends and like Hop and all them, and they're like, it's like if they're an extension of them, then we're obviously going to get along. So, and then you mentioned game night, so it's kind of you're in, dude.
Yeah, I don't want I think we probably wipe the floor with you on game night, but
you never know, dude, until it happens, bro. What games are we talking,
dude? Anything from you ever played like Settlers of Catan?
No, I have not.
It's got that was a game of the decade, bro. You got to learn it if you don't know it. And then Werewolf. So you know the game Mafia. Remember that game?
Yeah.
It's like a condensed version of that where everybody has like these different roles and you're trying to figure out who's the bad guy.
Oh, that sounds fun,
and
dude.
then like Liar's Dice, we got like 4 or 5 go-tos. But anyway, so I'm curious. Grew up in Missouri, right? Is this
Missouri.
Where?
Bonne Terre, Missouri.
Yeah, never heard of it.
Yeah, not a lot of people have, man. Bonnetterre. It's
little
French,
shout out.
It means good earth, good people.
Okay.
And that's what we represent in good old Bonne Terre, bro.
Because I was about to ask, you got this Midwestern warmth about you. I guess it maybe came from Bonne Terre.
Yeah, I probably did. I mean, there's some questionable. I'm proud to be that I'm like, hey, I came out of Bonne Terre, Missouri, but it's not. A lot of people like to give it a lot of negative attention.
Were you a stud athlete all through high school, all through Nebraska? How did you end up as a Cornhusker happen? Because that's a big deal. Coming from Missouri going to Nebraska, I can only imagine you're a stud.
I was pretty good growing up in football. I thought I was going to be like the next Walter Payton. I wanted to be a running back. Everybody wants to be like an offensive guy scoring touchdowns, but I found out pretty quickly in high school that I was going to ultimately play like linebacker, play defense. I will say, though, my very first offer was from Wake Forest as a wide receiver. I was all-state wide receiver.
Wow.
Yes, bro. I'm talking.
Yes, bro.
I'm talking scoring a lot of touchdowns on offense. But I knew when they offered that I wanted to play defense. And I kind of did a lot of my own recruiting because no one came to Bonterre and we were going through like a coaching change. And, it's not like the coaches know how to get you recruited, especially like when you come from a place that doesn't get recruited. So I would be on Rivals all the time. I would email people that were the heads of like these football camps, the rival camps and the Nike camps, and try to get an invite. And I did get an invite, ended up getting like, I was constantly, messaging them and trying to get like myself out there. It's so funny to look back on that I was just hustling like that, like probably annoying the hell out of them. But I ended up getting identified. I went to like Notre Dame camps all the time. And I was at the scout camp, scout.com, and I had ran a 4.5. And that's when somebody, beastie, dude.
Beastie.
And somebody there, like a reporter, had messaged the linebacker coach from Nebraska. It's like, hey, I found a guy you'll like. And once I got offered from like Illinois and then Nebraska, and then I started getting recruited heavily by a lot of Big 12 schools, a few Big 10, and then I want to say like Arkansas from the SEC came in the picture late. But I always wanted to go to Notre Dame growing up, and they had kind of cold shouldered me. I'm talking, I went to their camp every year, their football camp every year, the 3-4 day camp too. I wanted to get offered by them so bad. And they were like, if one of their guys at the Army game doesn't commit, then I would be a late offer. And that ended up happening. And then they wanted to try me out at fullback first. And I was just kind of off Notre Dame at that point. I had grown up Catholic. My mom, she's a Catholic school principal. And so my teacher would always come back with Notre Dame gear from a game every year. So I had wanted to go to Notre Dame, but so a lot of in-state pressure. And Nebraska was kind of going through a coaching change. I had committed to Callahan initially. They ended up being trash, and he got fired mid-season.
Yeah.
I don't think Coach Callahan will ever listen to this. I apologize. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
But he got fired, and I knew I wasn't going to go to Nebraska anymore, even though I was committed there. I was looking at Mizzou and Illinois heavy at the time. They recruited me hard, and then Bo had called me. I went on my officials in Nebraska. Bo had called me the week before my recruiting visit, or my recruiting announcement, whatever. And he's like, hey, can I do one more thing for you before you make your decision? And I was like, kind of like a courtesy gesture, like, yeah, sure. Like, what is he going to do anyway? And I was like, yeah, sure. And he was like, I want to fly my staff out there to you and watch the NFC championship, the championship game this weekend.
Sick.
And I was like, I didn't think it was sick at the time. I was like, oh man, you got to do another like in-home visit. Like I was kind of over recruiting. And I was like, yeah, that's fine with me. Like, yada, yada. We get to the night and we have just an awesome night with all the assistant coaches because the head coach can come at the time. Like the linebacker coach had came, and all the Nebraska fans remember Coach Mike Eckler. He had gotten a temporary tattoo with like my name on it, the Black Shirts logo, and he had a tattoo, and we had a great night. And then after they left, I was like, this is where I want to go. And that's kind of how I made my decision to go to Nebraska. And so I had my years in Nebraska being a black shirt dude. That's probably one of the better decisions I've ever made is going to Nebraska.
I don't know what a black shirt is.
Defense. So at the very root of the Nebraska black shirts is they had these practice jerseys where they had ran out and the defense needed like a different color. So somebody had went out and got these black jerseys from like a local store, and the defense started wearing these black jerseys, and the defense was performing well, and they, ultimately gave themselves the name Black Shirts. So if you're a starter on defense, you're a black shirt where you get to throw the bones, get the pinata in the stadium. Like that's how you knew like you were a black shirt.
Yeah.
You make a play on defense, you're throwing the bones, dude. But yeah, I don't know if you have any traditions like that at Vanderbilt.
I never threw the bones.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
never
yeah.
threw the bones.
It's just what, anchor down?
That's right. Just kind of throw it up.
Yeah.
And
What
maybe,
is it?
Maybe. Yeah, you got it.
Just there, right there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You haven't learned that yet,
I see people doing it, but you guys were,
dude. Speaking of Vandy and speaking of Missouri, how about the boys?
dude. I was hype. I texted Dob. I was like, "Yo, let's fucking go." Are we allowed to curse on this?
Yeah, go for it, man. Just
be myself. He's like, "Yo, let's fucking go, man." And he's like, "Yo, huge win." I was like, "I know you didn't expect to win that one because y'all had got beat by UNLV 34-10."
You don't have to remind me, dude.
I know.
Why are you reminding me?
But it's like, but they did huge upset for the boys, man.
That's right.
Anchor down.
we kind of shared a weight coach, Comp and I did. His Nebraska weight coach ultimately ended up at Vanderbilt, which is where I went to school. What did you study at Nebraska?
Business.
Business?
Yeah.
General?
Just business administration. When I was going on my visits, it's just business. When I was going on my visits, I would ask coaches what they would recommend because I wanted to be a coach when I got done playing football. And they just recommended business because it's the organizational factor and stuff. So I just did business.
So you get done, sign with the Redskins as an undrafted free agent. I was just reading your tweet that you have pinned about your goals that you're looking back on.
Yeah.
2004, was it 2013?
Yeah.
You didn't think you were going to make it, really. You said your job was to deliver coffee and inject humor.
Yes, dude. So I was undrafted, just a gritty good old white boy dude, just undrafted. Went to the Redskins, and you realize very quickly that none of the coaches know you like your college coaches do.
Yeah.
Because they all tell you just got to get into a camp. Just get into a camp, and you'll be good from there, basically. Not you'll be good, like you'll make the team, but like everyone's going to know who you are. Like all these teams, they do all their background research on you, yada, yada, yada. We find out really quickly that I was on the bottom of every depth chart, going in, especially on teams, you're at the bottom of every depth chart. As a backer, I was like there were 7 of us, and I was number 7. And I remember going out of OTAs thinking like, yo, this is an extreme long shot that I'm even going to make this team. And I had started working with Ben Newman. He's the one who actually sat me down and I wrote that kind of stuff out. And I would always say, like, there's 31 other teams out there. And he just knew in his mind, like, he's got to get me thinking that just focus on what's in front of you. That's when I started understanding goal setting, like law of attraction type stuff, like just focusing on what you want and focusing all your energy and effort and process on attaining those things. And he's like, what if you started saying I am a linebacker with the Washington Redskins? And I felt like, weird saying that because I'm still thinking in the back of my mind subconsciously that I'm not going to make this team. But I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll start doing that. And, we start doing mental training, this, that, the other. Well, we get into training camp, and day 1 of training camp, Kenyon Robinson, the starter at the time, tears his pec. So I go from like the 7th backer, there's only 3 teams rotating, 3 groups, to now I'm in the 3rd group. I would just get like 2 reps a day. But day 1, Keenan tears his pec. So I get to rotate in with the 3rd group. And I'm learning the playbook down. I'm picking up stuff fairly easy, fairly well. And I knew like my edge was my smarts, my IQ, all that kind of stuff. All those intangibles that you hear about, our types of crew people. And so I'm thinking, if I'm going to make this team, I got to basically game plan our offense. So in the offseason, I would break down our offense's film from OTAs and kind of, go by personnel, go by formations, what plays they run out of that formation, because that's likely what I'm going to see in training camp, because we're just trying to get better at being being the Redskins. And so I would study the playbook and I would study our own film. And so that was kind of my edge. Like every day going into the practice, I was like game prepared for like if we were to play any other team, like on the weekend, like if you're playing the Eagles or whatever, I game plan that way against our own offense. And once I got in with the 3rd group, no Emmys, no mental errors. I'm playing well. And that same first week, an undrafted guy who was ahead of me, Jeremy Kimbrough, he was working with the 2s now since Keenan went down. And he tweaked his hamstring. So he goes down, and then I get to move up with the 2s and play with the 2s within like a 5-day span. And I remember my 2nd or 3rd day running with the 2s. I had messed up my hamstring doing one-on-ones with the running backs. And I remember being in my hotel room, and I was like, if you tell a trainer, they'll either cut you, they'll send you packing. You know the drill. Like he is who he thought he was. Like, get him out. It's just an undrafted guy. Get somebody else in here. And I remember there's this one trainer I could confide in. It was Elliot German,
Good
how
dude.
you say it. Yeah, Elliot. You know Elliot,
Good
dude.
dude.
Dr. Evil. I ended up calling him Dr. Evil. But I would tell him on the side about my hamstring. And I was like, please don't tell Shanahan, don't tell anybody. And just help me pretty much, I put in quote, like duct tape my hamstring to where we can do whatever I can to like be out there and practice. And, he's needling, he's doing as much as he can for me. And, I'm sure in his mind, it's like this undrafted guy, like, I'll do what I can. He seems like a good dude. And I'm able to practice the next day. I remember my mental coach, he flew in. Fortunately, he flew in that day that I was injured. He's like, can you go? And I'm like, I have to try. I need to, or else I'll be gone. So that next day we practiced, and I have 2 interceptions and another PBU that in my mind was a pivotal point, redirected, like a pivotal point in my career, like looking in the NFL, like what was a pivotal moment for me? And that's a moment I always think to, because I like battled through that. And when I had those interceptions, Shanahan took notice. I picked off RG once, picked off Kirk, and then dropped another one that I should have had and made a lot of noise that day. And Shanahan had pulled me to the side before a game, like, hey, I see you out there, like you're like Mr. Interception, or he gave me some little nickname, but I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like Super Bowl winning coach Shanahan is like knows who I am. And it allowed me to play with the twos in our preseason game against the Titans. And I got to basically play with the twos all throughout training camp. I wasn't very good at special teams, but I had led our team in tackles on defense throughout all preseason. And that's I got cut and got put on practice squad. And the knock on me was that I didn't play special teams in college, and I wasn't very good at teams at the time. And so they just kind of put me on the shelf, and I was on P squad all year long. I got active my last game, week 17. I was like, that's like another little claim to fame, is I was London Fletcher's backup for his last game he ever played. Wow. But yeah, that's how I kind of got on the team. And then the next year, I make the team outright.
So this is what's always, I think, been my hang up with the NFL, is like the focus on what's in front of you concept, which I think is so good. And in the NFL, I did a terrible job with it. Yeah. Because I don't know, my loyalty and like that focus that I had was always kind of tied to the loyalty that I had to the team and the team had to me. And then when I got cut from the Chiefs, I was like, F it, man. Everybody's on their own. Like I am now in this pool of NFL players, and I don't care what team I'm on. Like, hopefully it works out at the end of you know what I'm saying? Like, I never said I am a Washington Redskins long snapper. It was always like, after I got cut from the Chiefs that first time, I was just like, I'm just going to do me. That's what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's not, I'm not saying that's the right mentality. I'm saying that's kind of how I coped.
Yeah. Well, fortunately on my end, I didn't get that kind of like bitter feeling, because it's a little bit of a bitter feeling of the business side of everything, until my free agency kind of happened with them, like when they kind of replaced me, and when I didn't feel like I should have been replaced at the time. And you just have this different outlook of what, the logo and who you are as a player, and what you start to realize, like what the game really is, even though vets would tell you about it. I mean, I was there for 5 years, and I enjoyed everybody. I had relationships with everybody. So you just always thought that's where you would always be. But I think like Ben Newman is his name, when he would like sit down and talk with me, it's like seeing that I was giving myself an out, thinking like, okay, I can focus on other teams, like thinking I'm not going to put everything into this one just because I know anything can happen. He's like, no, like what would happen to you if you just focus on this? If it doesn't work out, then you go back to the drawing board. But like, you need to train your mind to, this is your job. Like, this is the job you're going for. Don't think of everybody else, because if you think of everybody else, you're going to start giving yourself a reason to kind of like be nervous, I guess. You know what I mean? Not allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to say, I'm a starting linebacker with the Washington Redskins, because I don't want nobody else to hear that. Because I want to be like, hey, kid, like, no, you're not. You're right. Because then you kind of feel like, dumb after that. Right. But I see what you mean, because when that happened for me, like, I kind of feel the same way now. I have that same outlook, like, hey, I tell any young guy, like, there's every team out there. But I do think whatever you're doing, if that is truly your goal, like it's making that team, then you need to that just needs to be your focus, and whatever process is to attain, kind of that goal. But I feel you, dude. Whenever you get kind of done in a way you don't agree with, that's where.
But it was like, it's not like I'm bitter at the Chiefs. It was just like, it flipped the switch where I was like, oh, I'm always going to have a plan B now. And so like, this.
Oh, so it was like a learning.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been a learning process. I've been cut a couple more times than you have, but I'm curious. So you spent 5 years in DC. and this is what I learned from what that story you just told is a really good story. I think a lot of good learning points. One, you like didn't get down or discouraged. You were like, hey, I'm going to provide value where I can I'm going to deliver the coffee. I'm going to add humor. I'm going to game plan. I'm going to be like the seventh out of seventh linebacker. And like, I'm sure there's points of discouragement, but like you kept showing up and it didn't. I got to this kind of like depressed state where I was like, oh, I'm not freaking good. I don't belong here, but you kept at it. So that was the first thing. Second thing, you treated people really well. This Elliot guy, I know Elliot. I don't know why I said it like that.
This Elliot guy. Shout out Elliot, dude.
But like he took care of you because you were nice to him. And anyway, that ultimately allowed you to practice and change the game. And then you also, as you said, you were prepared for that opportunity when it came so that you were out there getting picks because you knew the offense better than anybody else out there because you were putting in the extra time to game plan them. So I think that's a really good story.
Yeah. It is like there is discouragement. Like, you're like sitting and I would be a guy who would watch old film at the highlights at Nebraska and think like, yo, was I as good as I thought I was, or am I as good as I'm thinking I am and I'm just not? You know what I mean? Like you have all these self-conversations with yourself. It's like those conversations you're having with yourself at those times of like discouragement where you're kind of in your own struggle per se. Like people don't really understand what you were necessarily going through. And it really is, when it comes down to it, when things are hard, all that you honestly have is your own brain that you're going to talk to. Is your own stuff that you're talking to. Like, your best friends, your girl, like people are going to have words of encouragement for you. But ultimately, like when stuff's hard and you are discouraged, the only person you're going to really listen to is yourself. Whether you take in anybody's advice, it's still going through your filter. And for me, like when I would be discouraged, I just think like it's way easier said than done, but the whole control what you can control, people try to throw that cliche at you. But I would try to find like, how am I going to be able to make the most of this? Because say I'm not as good as I think I am, or say I'm going to continue to go on and maybe not play again after this year. Like, how can I still have some positivity in my immediate impact or life right now, whether or not this is going to be my only year I play in the NFL? And it was like having relationships with guys and talking business stuff, side hustles, getting the whole coffee thing. Like you're the rookie, so you got to like do stuff for these guys. Yeah. And just kind of having fun in those moments outside of the coaching and the parts that are actually hard. And I feel like those are things that I try to lean on, try to do when times are hard. Like when I was going through my transition of not playing when I wasn't a starter at the Redskins anymore, what could I do to at least enjoy my daily routine? Because I was going to be in it regardless. And it's up to me whether I'm going to have fun or not about it. So I would like over swag myself. KO would always tell me, KO was my linebacker coach in Nebraska. You know KO. You probably, you know KO or know of him. Yeah. And KO was like, I always knew like when you were, I always knew when something was going on in your head or like you were protesting. It was like your way of protesting is you would come out and have like extra just ridiculous stuff. Like I'd have like 4 towels on my waist or something and just kind of look as ridiculous as I could and just be loud and have fun and be obnoxious and stuff like that. So that's something I always try and pride myself in is like when things are hard like that, like it's only going to be you that get yourself out of stuff ultimately.
Yeah. Today's episode is brought to you by Native. At Native, they create safe, simple, and effective products that people use in the bathroom every day. Native creates products with trusted ingredients and trusted performance. And if you're not convinced, check out the over 9,000 5-star reviews from their online customers. Native products are formulated without aluminum, parabens, and talc, and they're filled with ingredients found in nature such as coconut oil and shea butter. Native products are never tested on animals, and they even offer free shipping and returns. Making the switch to an aluminum-free deodorant does not mean having to sacrifice on product performance. Every morning, I start my day off with an hour-and-a-half workout, break a strong sweat, and Native has risen to the occasion, and I couldn't be more impressed. Native's formula contains simple ingredients that you can understand so you know everything that's in the deodorant. And Native comes in a wide variety of enticing scents for men and women, plus they release new limited edition seasonal scents throughout the year. They also offer an unscented formula and baking soda-free formula for those with sensitivities. They have coconut and vanilla scents, lavender and rose, cucumber and mint, and eucalyptus and mint, which is my personal favorite. For 20% off your first purchase, visit nativedeodorant.com and use promo code EAST during checkout. Again, for 20% off your first purchase, visit nativedeodorant.com and use promo code EAST during checkout.
You ended your time with the Redskins, went on to play with the Titans last year. We played against each other.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
One of my 3 games that I played.
Got that credit of the year, though.
That's right. You started a podcast. Was that this spring that it started?
Yeah. Bussin' with the boys. Shout out
right.
Bussin' with the boys, man. Go
Check
subscribe, like 5 stars, whatever you got to do, man.
Shawn and I did an interview. You could start there. It was fun. We told some stories we've never told before.
Really?
Yeah, I thought you did a good job interviewing. It was good.
Well,
so
dude,
go check it out. Bussin' with the boys. You can find it anywhere, including YouTube.
There we go.
Why did you want to start it?
So podcasting, again, is something that I always loved podcasting, listened to all of them. Back in the day, it was Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, Ben Greenfield, anything performance-based, because at the time I'm obsessed with ball. I'm obsessed with how can I find any percentage to be better, because I had to maximize my ability somehow. I was obsessed with doing that, so I'm always listening to podcasts. And then it became like Chris D'Elia, still Joe Rogan. I've always loved Joe Rogan. And Fighter and the Kid, King and the Sting now. I've just always loved podcasting. And back then when I was on the Skins, I was like, man, I should have a podcast. Like I wanted to do a podcast because I love having conversations with people about like their journey or stuff that they know that I necessarily don't know, and just kind of learn from having this conversation. And it just happens to be on a podcast. And so I come here to the Titans, and I actually start putting pen to paper on having a podcast. It was when I was leaving the Redskins. I finally wrote down, be one of the first NFL players to have a podcast while playing, and be one of the first coaches to do the same thing. Because in my mind, I was still going to be a coach. I come to Tennessee, and I signed a contract that doesn't say starter, but the chances are you're coming in and compete for a job. Like, we want to bring you in, and you're not just somebody that's going to fill a roster. Like, you're going to have an opportunity here. And then they drafted Shawn in the first round. And I remember sitting in a bar in Germantown as I was with my boys. They were in town with me, and we were watching the draft, and they had traded up, and they drafted Rashawn. And I remember sitting there, and I was like, oh, I leaned back like this. And Nick, one of my best friends, he passed me. He's like, I feel you, man. Like, hey, this is you though. Like, this is what, this is kind of like how your story just is. I'm like, I know, but I'm so sick of being in this underdog story. So fast forward, you draft your first rounder, you got to play Rashawn, stud athlete. Like, there was never like hate on Rashawn. Like, I love Rashawn. Stud athlete, but the first rounder's got to play. No matter how well I play in training camp or, how any of the competition goes, first rounder's going to play. So when I was being a depth guy, special teams player again, I kind of had that same discouraging conversation with myself for a while, to where, my boy Taylor and just being around my teammates was just like the highlight of my days. Was just going out and practicing, again, having like whatever kind of swag I could put out there, or be made fun of for swag or whatever it was, and just kind of have fun every day around the facility. Pop jokes, do all that stuff, help Rashawn study and be ready to go. And I remember telling Taylor that, I think I'm going to do this podcast. And Charo, my girlfriend, was like pushing me, hey, you should do it, yada, yada. So I started vision boarding how to do the podcast. And then I was going in to do some radio show for OTP, the Titans, whatever, I forget what OTP stands for, but their podcast, the Titans podcast. And I was on with like Keith Bullock and Amy and all of them. And I left there, and Taylor had called, and I was like, yo, I'm all in. I'm doing the pod. And he was like, hey, yo, I want to do it with you. Like, let's do it together. We should do it together. And it made me feel a lot better, because I was like, yo, I got one of my boys doing it with me. I don't have to go at it alone like you do. I commend you for it. It's like, it's amazing. But it makes you feel better. You're like, okay, I got somebody to do it with. January comes, our season ends. I'm getting it all set up. I'm meeting with producers. I'm meeting with different folks to kind of outline what the podcast is going to look like. Writing stuff down. Okay, I want to be one of the most engaging podcasts out there. So kind of like the way the Fighter and the Kid is, kind of like all the snippets, the clips out there that Chris D'Elia puts out, that Joe Rogan puts out, that all these podcasts that I follow that put out, and they kind of just give information and give content and provide stuff for people to laugh at, insightful stuff. I'm like, okay, I want it to look like that. I want cameras. I want it to be high video quality. I'm doing all these things. Taylor leaves and goes to train in California, goes to be a Cali boy for a few months. And I'm like, yo, you swear you are going to be all in on this? Because if not, I'm going to go all in on it now in January. And he's like, yo, 100%, like I'm in. I'm like, okay, I'll wait on you. So we get to April. He comes back. We're going all in with Cardboard Films. They were kind of going to produce everything. And Taylor and I are like, yo, he's like, are you sure? Like, is this even going to be cool? Like, is the podcast, is it going to be anything? Like, are you sure about this, Will? I'm like, yeah, man, just give it a minute. Like, it'll be cool. I'm telling you, like all these conversations we have, like, it'll be cool. Trust me. And we come upon a bus. We see a bus out back of the same building we're sitting in with Cardboard Films. And the bus doesn't run or move, and it was for sale. And Taylor saw it. He was in love with it. He was all in about it. I was kind of like, are we going to be able to get all this equipment on here? Like, is the vision that we're talking about going to be able to happen on this bus? Because it had the chairs, the seating and everything was still there. There's like wasp nest, like everything there. So we had to gut it, put money into it, turned it around into what you saw when you came on the bus.
Looks good, dude.
Yeah, put furniture, like sound paneling, floors, walls, everything, and decked it out. And we just started putting podcasts in the bank in like late April or early May. And we released our first one on like May 23rd. There were a couple that me and him tried doing on our own that were not good at all, that we'll never release. But yeah, we start going and we catch some traction. The Vrabel one hits for us. Delaney, everybody's going to click on the first one. Like, you know, all the fan base, you know, your Titans fan base is going to click on it and they're going to see if you're worth a shit at all at speaking on a mic or having any kind of quality conversation. Delaney one was a really good one. We had a really good sit down with a few people, man. It was like Delaney, Arthur Smith, Rich Froning. And then I think we did like Bussin with all the boys or something like that. Those were kind of the four we had in the bank before we released one.
You came out of the gate hard with that.
Yeah,
stuff, man.
yeah. And
because Jalen Ramsey's went pretty viral.
Yeah, once Vrabel's hit and he was like, he would cut his piece off for a Super Bowl. It was like that kind of went viral. Barstool kind of grabbed some of our stuff. Then we DM'd, or not DM'd, but I think Taylor messaged Jalen. We got lucky and he came for that one. And we just kind of caught a lot of traction, dude. And it's been fun. It's been a blast. Like, I love doing the podcast. Like, I like this world I'm in. Like, you were there the day that the Saints hit me up to come, and I was going to fly out the next day to go try out, be a Saint. And I was kind of hoping that football was prolonged like it was, so I could still do the podcast, like still interview you guys and stuff like that. So it's been a blast, man. We've had a lot of fun with it. We think there's a lot of good things on the horizon. So I'm interested to see where it'll be a year from now.
Dude, you're preaching a lot of good life lessons. I don't know if you know that or not, but like you mentioning that you saw what Joe Rogan and Chris D'Elia were doing with their podcast, so you were like, that's what I'm going to do with mine. Like, just modeling people who have been successful is I think it's super valuable lesson that makes that fear of starting a new project, whether it's a podcast or YouTube channels, like whatever. It's like, I don't know how to do this. Well, model somebody who does not.
Is that what you guys do? Is that what you did?
That's what we did. That's what we did starting out. And I wish we would have done it more, honestly, because it took us like 2.5, 3 years to find our stride, when really, if we had just kind of done what you did and wrote down exactly like, hey, I want it to look like this, and then like done that research of this fits our lifestyle and what we're comfortable with, and also what our goals are, you know what I'm saying, with the pie. So I wish we would have done it more.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, you have Pat McAfee's out there. Yeah. And fortunately for the podcast, and it's like, anytime I'm thinking about doing anything, like, like you said it's like success leaves clues. Yeah. And I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to find the stuff that I've liked from other people that, okay, how can we make it our own? And just follow them and see them. Like, I just watch and see what like Brennan Schaub, Chris D'Elia, Pat McAfee, Joe Rogan, I just watch what they do. And I'm like, yo, how can we kind of mimic that? Yep. So when people say, yo, stop trying to be like this or so-and-so, and it's like, yeah, we'll probably be more mindful of that. But those are the people who inspired and influenced ultimately this to happen. So
Yeah.
That's what I try and do. I just try to model what else is out there.
And the second thing is you just asked. You were like, hey, you were a little intimidated to do it by yourself, it sounded like. So you asked Taylor Lewan to join you with it. And then you also asked people to be on your show, like Jalen Ramsey, and all of a sudden, all that contributes to the success that you guys are having now. So I feel like that's one thing, fortunately, that I don't have a problem with is like Shawn doesn't like asking. I was like, hey, what would you think if I had this person on the show? She's like, are you going to ask them to interview them? I was like, yeah, how else the heck am I going to interview them? You know what I'm saying?
So, yeah, I know, dude. And I'm like the same way. I get a little like, I just get nervous. Like I have a little anxiety to me to where I'm like nervous to be vulnerable enough to go out and stick my neck out and do something that's like uncomfortable. Yeah. But it's like, you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. It does seem like you have that little gene to ask, not be afraid to be kind of shameless and ask, but that's how stuff gets done, dude.
It's probably shamelessness or recklessness, one of the two. How'd you go from wanting to coach and your identity on that goal sheet being, I am a Washington Redskins linebacker? Talk me through the evolution to where you are now, because I think that's changed.
As far as wanting to be a coach, are you saying like
your goals have changed, right?
My goals have changed.
Kind of
like
identity
I don't know if I want to coach as much anymore. Like it's like I don't want to say I don't want to coach, just because I feel like it's something I would get a lot out of. I would be good at it, and it was something I've always like wanted to kind of do. And you see the time that those dudes put in, man. It's crazy.
I do not.
Especially if you want a family. Yeah. Especially if you like want a family and everything. And you want to be not saying that coaches aren't involved with their families, but I'm just saying the time you want to put into your family, it doesn't kind of align with the coaching blueprint. And then finding kind of when I got injured, I sprained my Liz Frank in 2017, my last year at the Skins. And I got put on IR, and I was you can only play video games so long and that sort of thing. So I just started, listening to that's when I got turned on to Bigger Pockets podcast. Again, big podcaster. That's where I get a lot of my ideas and excitement. I started listening to Bigger Pockets podcast, and they made it sound like, anybody can get in this real estate world. And they're interviewing people that do it from all walks of life, whether you have a $100 million portfolio to if you just started and you only have one house and how you got started about doing it. And they interviewed people that they walk you through all this stuff. So I started getting excited because I have this business itch I always want to scratch. And being able to have all that downtime allowed me to listen to podcasts, read some books, and start to get well-versed in wanting to, be in real estate. So again, I'm vision boarding, I'm writing stuff down, how I want to go about stuff, yada, yada, yada. And I started to catch on with real estate. And then when I started to do that and I started to realize that football I'm on my back nine. I'm not going to play football forever. I knew I wasn't anyway, but I needed to really start thinking about stuff. And if podcasting was keeping me up at night, laying down, and people were telling me to do it, I needed to get uncomfortable, be vulnerable, stick my neck out, and go after something that I obviously want since it keeps me up at night. And so that's when I started doing that. And then with this kind of, success with podcasting or just enjoyment out of podcasting has made me think, I kind of want to maybe stay in this space or maybe make something happen out of this. And so that's kind of where I've transitioned from all football to some variety with doing other things. I've just always enjoyed football growing up. So that's kind of why I was in that pathway to being a coach and do all this and that. But yeah, it's kind of why everything's kind of changed. The outlook's kind of been a little different. And I feel like I can't do this and coach at the same time. Because as you know, we're pretty reckless on the podcast. I'm pretty reckless. If I'm going to be a coach and pursue those kinds of jobs, I'm sure that they would probably not want me to do a podcast, but maybe they would. You never know.
I am impressed with you and excited for you. It's not easy. I feel like the further you take a sport, the longer you do it, the harder it is to transition out of it. So all these Jason Witten, I don't know the guy personally, but the way it comes off to me is he retires and then it's I don't know. I did this till I was 37. I don't know what to do. Yeah. So he retires for a year, comes back. Now I'm sure there's more to the story, but still it is hard to walk away from the sport. I think you having another passion that you're developing actively is freaking awesome. I
Yeah.
think it's great.
I mean, you can probably attest to this. Like, it's like you probably think in your mind, because you know how the transition period is. Whether you play a lot and you played for years or you're bouncing around a lot. Like I want to say last year when I had tore my hamstring, I was out for like 4 weeks and I wasn't playing, right? I'm thinking to myself, because I signed, and we were talking about this last time, like you can Google what our contracts and stuff and like that are. We were talking about that on the pod when I was trying to get Shawn. I'm like, hey, what's the number? But I'd signed a 1-for-2, right? And I knew that I wasn't loving football like I was anymore. And just kind of being the depth special team, like it wasn't fulfilling what I was wanting out of the sport. And I was thinking, okay, if I objectively look at myself, I'm a depth special teams player. I was
by the way, you said you weren't good at special teams and you became good at special teams.
Yeah, and I was hype about that, dude. I was so pumped about that.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you. If I objectively look at myself, it's like, okay, my last year with the Skins had an awesome few games I played in before I got injured. Fortunately, I wish I wouldn't have got injured because it would probably set me up for a better free agency, yada, yada, yada. But I end the year on IR. I go into the Titans and I play on a 1-year deal, 1-for-2, and I don't get the opportunity that I thought I was going to have because, they drafted a first rounder. So I played a full year as a special team backup guy. And for me, in my like measurables, right? Like I come from an undrafted pedigree. I'm not a high round pedigree. So teams don't look like, oh, he just needs to be in a system. It's like, okay, he might be starting to fizzle out because I'm not playing on the field. I'm not able to show what I can still do at age 28, 29. And so I'm like, I'm going to go into this free agency. I'm probably going to be a 1-year minimum guy. Like that's just the way it is. And so we looked at, okay, I'm probably going to try and not be in an OTAs. I'm just going to tell everybody no for tryouts and this and that and the other. And I'm just going to try and, make it to training camp and go toward the end of training camp and then get picked up and be on a roster for the year. And I will probably play my last year of football, possibly. The probability is high because, again, I wasn't coming off a huge year. So you're going to be on a roster and be a depth player again because that's just how people are seeing you, whether I am right, wrong, and different. It's like I will probably play my last year of football unless I have a Kenny Vaccaro type situation where, if you don't know Kenny's story, he was a free agent all the way to the very end, just like me on the Saints. He came to the Titans late on a 1-year minimum deal because Jonathan Cyprien got injured and he played a full year as a starter, went back into free agency, got re-upped. So unless I have that situation where I'm going to be a starter again, it's probably my last year of football. So dealing with that, I think last year I would have those nights and conversations to where I start to get nervous because I'm like, yo, this is probably it. I'm getting to that point in my career. And I started to get nervous because it's like, I do need to start thinking about what I need to do. I've always prided myself on having plan B, C, and working on side hustles and having conversations with people in the business world. It's like, it's just becoming more of a reality. And you start to get nervous about that transition because it's like, and it sounds stupid, dude, but the clout you have is going to go away. Yep. And that bothered me. Whether, again, right, wrong, and different, like that's just what was going through my mind. Like the attention you have, it's not going to be there anymore. And it's like, yeah, I can admit that I like some attention, but it's like, I was coming to grips with that. And it was kind of like, you're like, yo, what am I going to do if I don't play football? Like if I'm not going to be a football player anymore, like, you're just not going to be held on this pedestal. And whether that sounds ridiculous or selfish to say, it's like, that's the life we were in as football players. Like you've always kind of had stuff mapped out for you as a football player. Like people like you, and it's because you play in the NFL. It's like, yo, if I'm not going to be that guy again, like I need to start to work on my transition, or I like knew in my mind, or I'm probably going to be a little depressed that I'm not playing football anymore. It's not who I am. Like that's what I identified with being, whether I wanted to say it or not, or say the whole cliche of football's something I do. It's not who I am. I wanted to preach that message, but I didn't necessarily, I still was like, I loved my life that I had. And I just want to understand the game differently than everybody else. Yeah. I just prided myself on that stuff. And I love being one of those just grinders that was always ready to train and be in the process at all times and have fun with it. So when I look at, okay, what do I like that isn't football? It's like, I like sharing information. Like I like speaking to kids and youth. And when people have me to speak, I like speaking and kind of talking about my journey and process, and people, when they get something out of it and can kind of resonate and relate it to their life. Okay. I get something out of that. I like making people laugh, like on social media. Like I noticed that I enjoy doing that. So for me, it was like, okay, well, find something around that you like to do that's that immediate. And I noticed that I enjoy podcasting every day. So it's like, why not find something that, okay, I can podcast, I can have all these conversations that I enjoy having about process, about journey, about humor. I can have that on a podcast. I can, if I'm like making people laugh on social media, how can I utilize this platform to educate, bring people behind the scenes and access us and make them laugh at the same time? I can do that through podcasting and being on social media. And so that's just how stuff started to transpire for me. I try to use that. It's like, I was super nervous to kind of put yourself out there because they're knowing everything about you. Or they know what you say, they know how you think, they know kind of what you believe. Yeah. Whether or not you want to go back and erase what you said and be like, listen, I didn't mean it like that. Like, you're putting yourself out there to see, are people going to accept what you are? Yeah. Or are they going to be like, yo, you're trash at this? Yeah. And then you're going to like, take an L and kind of get out of that space. But you're super nervous, but that's what you got to do. You got to spend time with yourself.
Yeah. I think, the platform of the NFL is talked about a lot within and outside of football, of like, oh, this is such a once in a lifetime opportunity. And like a lot of people would die to be in this position. And like, it is a great opportunity, but what people don't do, and I think is important, I'm going to pull out a Taylor Swift reference here.
Love it.
Is like, they don't convert that platform into anything that can continue to build their platform after they leave the NFL, which is the platform. So like Taylor Swift, I feel like is a genius because she started in country music and then she was like, okay, that runway probably only goes so far. So then she turned to pop and now whatever the heck she is, you know what I'm saying? Like she has continued to evolve herself and use her previous position as country music star to build her current position. Does that make sense? So you use just like that, your previous position of NFL player to now converting that into podcaster and doing all these great things. I do want to say one thing. I saw a comment on YouTube on Shawn and I's video. Someone said, no Taylor Lewan, because he wasn't a part of the interview. He's like, if Taylor Lewan's not in the interview, I don't want to listen to it. It was the comment.
Oh, that was the comment? I haven't seen him.
Well, I was thinking about that, and I feel like we might be in similar situations because you have your partner, Taylor Lewan. I have Shawn.
That's my Shawn Johnson.
Exactly. So like when I started this podcast, it was, no one's going to care about this because Shawn's not involved. But I would say and encourage you that like, dog, you can do it without Taylor Lewan. Taylor Lewan's great. It's a great show, but don't be discouraged if like Taylor's out after one season of it. Just like keep doing your thing, just like you did with freaking showing up your first year in the Redskins, persevering, not being discouraged. You don't need this from me because you guys are already killing it with the show, but like whatever happens, you can crush it if you want.
Just keep on keeping on. Yeah, I do appreciate that. Yeah. Like I noticed that stuff and it just is what it is. You know what it is too.
Yep. Yeah.
It just is.
And that's how the internet is too.
Yeah. That's just how the internet is. Like the internet ultimately will always be undefeated. Yeah. Just because somebody will have something to say that'll mess with you, even though it means absolutely nothing. So it just is what it is.
This has been fun. I'm curious. I think you're more of a sentimental guy than you might let on to, because just based off that tweet that I read of your goals, it was like, you're mixing the humor. I know you got the For the Brands or For the Boys brand and the Bussin' with the Boys, but like, I honestly think it's a really good mix. And that's probably why you have such a good reputation within the NFL of like, oh, this guy's a freaking real dude that has problems and is honest about them and tears up because he lost a buddy. But he's also like has a lighthearted approach. And, I feel like you do a good job of mixing reality with a lighthearted perspective. So hats off. But I'm curious, what are your quick fire 3 goals that you have now at this point in your life?
That's solid. That's a solid question. I would say and we're gonna hit this. So I don't know. Before we started the podcast, like the goal for the podcast was have a podcast that has 1 million downloads. That was just like I just had that, and fortunately, we're on the mark to shatter that. So I kind of the goals will revolve around my real estate portfolio, podcasting, and a way to build something else, whether that's through my football camp. And I'll have to kind of sit and chew on it more to kind of see, okay, how much bigger how can we go in somewhere else? But they always revolve around areas that I'm involved in and an area that I haven't really been in that I'm going to have to venture out to. So, for instance, when I was playing football, Newman, we sat down, it was called this Prize Fighter Day. And you had goals in football, you had goals in a business goal and a community goal. And of course, I can knock out football goals all day long. But it's like, okay, a business goal, I'm just starting to learn about the stock market. I want to understand the basic stuff of the stock market. So it was like read 2 introductory books to the stock market and make your first investments personally outside of somebody who might help you. And so I had read like Elements of Investing, and I started to get in the whole index, read stuff on like, Warren Buffett, and got uncomfortable, like, okay, dive into that. My community one was have 5 speaking engagements and give back to the community in that way and putting on a football camp. Terrified to speak, hate speaking. I'm on this interview right now and sweating. I sweat every interview I do. That's just how I am. I'm like nervous to like be out there, right? Mm-hmm. And so I had spoken to 5. I did my 5 speaking engagements, and then the next year it's like, okay, what do I want out of football? What do I want out of community? What do I want out of business? So all my goals kind of revolve around that. So if it's podcasting, that kind of switches podcasting with football. What is that going to look like for us going into 2020? And we're still diving into so many different things that we don't necessarily know what it's going to look like yet. We have a lot of fun stuff we're kind of vision boarding. And we just got to figure out the exact directions we want to go. And then I'll kind of know what that goal looks like. Business involves around real estate and growing my portfolio there and learning about how to network and meet people and stay organized to make sure operations are running. Like when I got to Tennessee last year, it was buy 2 pieces of property in Nashville and have a short-term rental, have one of them be a short-term rental. And I accomplished that in February. We bought a house here. We bought our house here, our townhouse here, and then also bought a short-term an Airbnb property. Like I checkmarked those goals and learned the process of short-term rentals and Airbnbs and really dove into what that world is like by listening to podcasts. So I don't really know what the next year is going to look like, but they revolve around those things. And then community-wise, it'll probably be something branched off from like what value I can add more to than just a football camp back in my hometown. So that's kind of how my goals kind of work. And then they keep evolving probably every year.
What is one quality, maybe it's a piece of advice, that you feel like your story has embodied that you could share with the audience?
Dang, that's some heat right there. You didn't tell me about this one, Lexi.
Lexi.
Self-awareness. I would say self-awareness. I think self-awareness is one of the most important qualities you can have. Because again, like at the end of the day, everything revolves around the conversation you have with your own self. And whether that's when things are going good, when things are going really good and you start listening to everybody else and things that are outside of what your own conversations were, you start to believe in that stuff. And that's when stuff starts to get corrected and a shift will happen or something negative will happen. You won't understand why. And then you'll ultimately get back to having the conversations with yourself because you got outside of that. When you're extremely discouraged or struggling, right? Or you're trying to be very disciplined. It's all about that self-awareness of how you're talking to yourself. Like I'm big in the self-talk. I'm big with always starting, like we've talked, all my stories have revolved around like writing something out and like, okay, Will, What does that look like? This is what you want. How does that process look? And I write out what the process looks like. And then it's up to me to read these things, see them, remind myself every day, and talk to myself in that way. Because obviously, day one, Andrew East and Will Compton, when we're thinking about starting a podcast or working out again in the off season, we're extremely excited about what we put together on all these boards and everything else. But when something doesn't go our way and it's day 30, we're going to have a different conversation. And if you don't have that stuff if I don't have that stuff laid out in front of me, what I wanted in the beginning, I start to lose sight of that. And I start to believe whatever I'm telling myself other than what I was saying on day one. So I think like self-awareness is huge. I think you got to be able to look at yourself objectively. That example to me is like understanding how my NFL career is going to work, whether I think I'm good or not. You know what I mean? Like I believe that I'm really good and I can be a starter in the NFL, but I got to be able to look at it objectively. Like, hey, how do these GMs think? How does this owner think? And if that's how they think, and if that's how the year is going to project and go, then what is it going to look like after that? Like, what is Will Compton going to do for himself to where I don't get in a hole? If I am in a hole, ultimately it comes down with how you talk to yourself. So it's being fully self-aware in these situations of struggle, discipline, success. It all comes down to how you talk to yourself. So I would say self-awareness.
That's some gold right there. Will, thank you for joining the show. If you guys haven't, go check out Bussin' with the Boys wherever you consume content, YouTube, podcast. Highly recommend it. And we would be remiss if we didn't give our boys Dustin Hopkins,
Trey Way, dude. Yeah,
Trey Way, as he's called, Tress Way.
I don't know if it wants to be called Trey Way anymore. That dude's in prison now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But anyway, shout out Tress Way, Nick Sundberg, D Hop, Gabby, Bree.
Good people over there.
Good, great people. Gosh dang it, what's Nick Sundberg's wife's name?
Floor.
Dude, sorry, Floor. I apologize. Right there, I know. Shout out to the squad, man.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, brother.